People often ask me why I never speak about my childhood. Why I avoid certain rooms, certain smells, certain memories. Why even at 79, the sound of certain footsteps can make my hands shake. But the truth is this: some memories don't fade. They hide, they wait for the moment you're strong enough to face them, and today, after a lifetime of silence, I'm finally ready. My name is Margaret Hale, but most people call me Granny Meg. I may look like any other old woman who keeps roses in her garden and folds laundry by the window, but behind this calm life is a past I spent decades trying to bury. It all began in the house my parents raised me in. A house filled not with warmth, but with shadows, shadows that stretched long across the hallway, especially near the locked door at the end. A door that made my stomach twist even as a child. My parents had a rule: never go near that room. Never ask about it. Never speak of it. Children don't question rules, they feel them. And I felt fear long before I understood it. But one evening, when I was barely 10, something changed. I woke to muffled voices drifting through the walls, my mother's shaky whisper and my father's low, urgent tone. I crept to the hallway, and that's when I saw my mother crying against the doorway of that room. Her shoulders shook, her hands were clenched, and she repeated one sentence over and over, as if praying, "We can't keep doing this to her, we can't." Her voice cracked, and my father silenced her with a sharp look, the kind that made even the walls tremble. That night, I realized something terrible wasn't just happening in that room. It was happening to me, not in ways a child could describe, not in ways I understood, but in ways my body remembered: tightness in my chest, waking up afraid, memories that felt half missing and half too real. The next morning, my mother avoided my eyes. She moved carefully, cautiously, as if the air itself might break her. My father acted normal, cheerful even, humming while eating breakfast. I didn't have words for it then, but now I know. Some houses teach children to fear the very people meant to protect them. Years passed. The door stayed locked, but the fear it held seeped through the walls, settling into my bones. I lived in silence, thinking that silence kept me safe, until the day the door finally opened. A day I will never forget. Re-hook. And when I stepped inside that room, shaking, barefoot, trembling, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see, something that shattered every memory I had of my parents. The day the door opened, it wasn't because anyone invited me in. It was because, for the first time, no one was watching. My father had left early for work. My mother was in the backyard hanging laundry. And the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear things you normally ignore: the settling of floorboards, the hum of old bulbs, the low murmur of memories you try not to remember. I walked down the hallway, my bare feet padding softly on the wood. That door, was cracked open for the first time in my life. Just a sliver. Just enough for a thread of cold air to slip through. I wish I could tell you I was brave, but the truth is, I was curious, and curiosity is often the first spark of survival. I pushed the door gently. It creaked, long, slow, and exhausted, as if it had been holding back secrets for years. Inside was a small, dim room. No windows. Just a single lamp placed on the floor. The light flickered weakly, creating trembling shadows on the walls. But what struck me first wasn't the darkness. It was the smell. A mix of old wood, dust, and something else. Something metallic, something sharp, something that made my stomach twist. In the corner stood a narrow cot with rumpled sheets. The kind of cot no child should ever recognize. Next to it, a small dresser. And on top of that dresser, a hairbrush I knew too well. My OWN. Breath hitched. Why was my brush in this room? Why were the sheets messy, like someone had slept in them? Why did the air feel heavy with a fear I didn't yet have words for? As I stepped closer, I noticed faint scratch marks on the wooden floor, tiny, uneven lines forming no clear pattern but speaking a language of desperation. My hands shook uncontrollably. Suddenly, behind me, a floorboard creaked. I froze. My mother stood in the doorway, her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. In that moment, She looked both terrified and heartbroken. "Meg," she whispered, voice trembling. "You shouldn't be here." I swallowed hard. Why is my brush here? Why does this room feel wrong? Her lips quivered. She opened her mouth as if to answer, but no sound came out. Instead, tears gathered in her eyes, and she shook her head slowly, painfully. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said. "I tried to stop it. I tried to protect you." Protect me from what? From who? Before I could ask, she grabbed my shoulders gently but urgently. "You must never come in here again," she whispered. "He can't know you saw this." He, the word echoed through my soul. She meant my father. I didn't understand why, but I understood fear. And my mother was drowning in it. She pulled me out of the room, shut the door, and turned the lock with trembling hands. "Meg," she said, barely able to speak, "promise me you'll forget this room." But I couldn't forget, because one question was now etched into my mind. What had my father done behind that locked door? Rehook, and later that night, when I heard him open the door again, I realized the nightmare wasn't in the room. It was walking through my home every day. That night, the house breathed differently. Heavier. Colder. As if it knew I had seen something I was never meant to see. I lay in my small bed, clutching my blanket up to my chin. The moonlight filtered through thin curtains, casting pale stripes across the floor. Every sound was sharper, clearer. Even the ticking clock beside my bed felt like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. Then I heard it. The soft thump of footsteps. Slow. Measured. Too familiar. My father. His shadow appeared beneath my door, long, solid, unmoving. I held my breath, my small fingers trembling. He stood there for several seconds, as if listening, deciding. The doorknob twitched. Just once. Then stopped. He didn't enter. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, a silent figure on the other side of a thin piece of wood. And in that moment, something inside me understood what my mother had been trying to shield me from. The darkness I feared wasn't outside. It lived within the very walls of our home. The footsteps moved away after what felt like forever. But I didn't sleep. At dawn, my mother came into my room. Her eyes were red, tired, swollen. She looked as if she hadn't slept at all. "Pack a small bag," she whispered. I blinked. "Why?" "We're leaving for a few days." Leaving? We never went anywhere without my father. My mother didn't explain. She simply helped me gather my clothes, her hands trembling the entire time. Then she braided my hair with slow, shaky fingers, the way she always did when she was scared but pretending to be brave. Before we could walk out the door, however, the front latch clicked. My father walked in. He looked at the bag in her hand. At my coat. At our shoes by the door. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Going somewhere?" he asked in a tone that sent ice through me. My mother stepped in front of me, shielding me gently. "Just a visit. I thought Meg should get some fresh air." He nodded slowly. Too slowly. Then he placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. "You should have talked to me first." His grip tightened. She winced. And I understood something that ruined every childish illusion I had left. My mother wasn't just afraid for me. She was afraid of him. That day, we didn't leave. He made sure of it. The bag was unpacked, the door remained locked. My mother cried quietly in the kitchen, her head in her hands. And when night returned, the hallway grew dark again, silent except for the sound of his footsteps, moving toward the locked room at the end, the room I now understood was never meant to protect me. It was meant to hide what he was capable of. Rehook. And the very next morning, something happened that changed everything, because a stranger knocked on our door and said he knew what my father was doing. The knock came early the next morning, 3 sharp taps that sliced through the heavy silence hanging over our home. My mother stiffened instantly, her hands freezing over the dish she was washing. My father looked up from the table, his expression unreadable. No one ever visited us. No neighbors. No friends. No relatives. So this knock, this interruption, was not normal. My father stood slowly and walked toward the door. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened. My mother reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it, hard. A silent warning, the door opened. A man stood outside. Tall, neatly dressed, with worry etched into the lines of his face. His eyes landed on me almost immediately, widening with a kind of recognition that made my heart skip. "Mr. Hale," the man said calmly. "We need to talk." My father's posture shifted, a subtle stiffness, like an animal sensing danger. "This isn't a good time," he replied. The stranger didn't move. "It's about Margaret." My breath caught in my throat. My father blocked the doorway more firmly. "You don't need to concern yourself with my family." But the man stepped forward, just enough to keep my father from closing the door. "I do," he said softly. "Your daughter spoke with someone. And that someone is worried about her." Daughter. Someone. Worried. My mother went pale, gripping me so tightly I nearly winced. My father's voice sharpened. "You need to leave." But the man didn't flinch. Instead, he lowered his voice to a near whisper, one that slipped into the house like a cold wind. "Children shouldn't be afraid to sleep," he said. "And they shouldn't flinch when their father stands too close." Silence fell like a heavy stone. My father's face hardened. "You're making assumptions." "No," the man said quietly. "I'm following evidence." My stomach twisted. Evidence? Someone knew. Someone had seen. The stranger glanced behind my father and locked eyes with me. His gaze was sad, almost apologetic. "Meg," he said softly, "you didn't deserve any of this." My father slammed the door before he could say another word. The house shook. My mother pulled me into her arms, trembling. I could feel her heartbeat racing, her breath uneven. My father turned toward us, his voice dangerously calm. "What did you tell him?" My mother answered before I could speak. "Nothing. She told no one." But he didn't believe her. He stared at me, long, cold, calculating. And in that moment, I realized something bone deep. This wasn't a father protecting his family. This was a man protecting his secret. For the rest of the morning, he paced the house like a storm searching for something to destroy. My mother tried to stay close to me, but he became unpredictable, watching every move we made. But by evening, everything escalated. He demanded we go to the locked room. My mother froze. I froze. The world froze. He wanted to talk. And he wanted the door closed behind us. Rehook. But before we reached the room, the front door burst open, and the same stranger stepped inside, holding something that made my father's face drain of all color. My father spun around, shock freezing him mid-step as the stranger stepped fully inside our home. His chest rose and fell quickly, like he'd run the entire way here. In his hand, he held a small brown folder, thin, worn, but somehow heavier than anything I'd ever seen. My mother's hand clamped around mine. I could feel her fear pulsing through her skin. My father's voice came out tight. "You can't be here." The stranger didn't back away. "I warned you yesterday," he said quietly. "But you didn't listen." My father's jaw clenched. "Whatever you think you know." The stranger cut him off. "It's not what I think. It's what I heard." He lifted the folder slightly. "And what she told someone last week." "She?" "Someone?" My mother's breath caught. My father's eyes darted to her, sharp, suspicious. The stranger continued, his tone steady but filled with something like anger held back for too long. "A neighbor heard Meg screaming 2 nights ago. They didn't want to report it until they were sure. They came to us yesterday. And when I spoke to them again this morning, they told me everything." My heart pounded painfully. Screaming? I didn't remember screaming. But my body remembered being afraid. My father laughed, forced, brittle. "Children have nightmares. That's all this is." The stranger shook his head. "Nightmares don't leave bruises." Silence. My mother crumpled inside, her tears falling without a sound. My father took a step forward like he wanted to snatch the folder out of the stranger's hand. But the stranger stood firm. "I'm with Protective Services," he said sharply. "This household has been under quiet observation for months. And today, it ends." My father's face twisted. Anger, fear, confusion all battling within him. "You can't take her," he growled. The stranger opened the folder. Inside were photographs, none explicit, none graphic, but enough. Pictures of the locked room. The scratches on the floor. My disheveled belongings inside. My terrified expressions captured by a neighbor through a window. A written statement from someone who had witnessed my father dragging me by the arm. Small things. But small things tell big truths. My father lunged forward. My mother screamed. The stranger held up a hand. "Don't," he warned. "Police are waiting outside. One wrong move, and this ends badly for you." For the first time in my life, my father stepped back. Not out of fear, but because he finally realized he had lost control. My mother fell to her knees, sobbing, sobs she had held inside for years. And I just stood there, numb. Because children don't understand when a cage opens. Freedom feels too big. The stranger knelt down and spoke to me gently. "You're safe now, Meg. You don't have to go back into that room. Ever again." His words cracked something inside me, something that had been clenched tight for so long it almost didn't know how to let go. He offered me his hand, and for the first time, I walked out the front door without fear chasing me down the hallway. That night, my mother and I left the house forever. We never looked back. Some stories don't get happy endings, but they get new beginnings. And this was ours. Final rehook. Because even today, as an old woman, whenever I tell this story, I remind people. It wasn't the locked room that saved me. It was the person brave enough to knock on our door.